Hi, welcome to episode 231 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called the Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? I am coming to you on Monday, May 20th. It is a dreary day in Kansas City. We have had lots of rain over the weekend, and today it is back down into the 50s. So it is chilly. I managed to get outside for a little bit of exercise before coming back in. And the heat in our house is off because we've actually been doing a little bit of air because earlier this week it was in the 80s and humid. So we're bouncing around a lot, which is very Midwestern, but this afternoon I am cuddled up in a sweater and I'm enjoying a cup of tea. So I hope that you have had a lovely week since I have seen you last. Last week was a busy one for me. I work for Stitchcraft Marketing. I think I have told you that before. And we went to Quilt Market, which was actually in town in Kansas City. It was at the Kansas City Convention Center, and there were a number of other events associated with it. So I got to sort of immerse myself in the world of quilting, which was kind of fun because it's not something that I've really been involved in. Most of my interest in sewing has been more around garment sewing, so I could create some clothes for myself. Not that I've really done much of that, just ever so slightly a little bit. But it was like seeing the quilting masters. There were exhibitions of quilts. There were all different companies with beautiful fabrics. And for anyone who has an appreciation for the textiles, as knitters and crafters do, it was kind of an amazing thing to go see and a world that I don't get to immerse myself in very often. So I was actually out of the house a lot last week and very busy, and I spent Saturday at Quilt Market, which was kind of fun. But I also got some of my own crafting in, so there are a few things to talk about today. And now I am just in the process of kind of getting things ready and trying to work ahead for my absence in June. So I am doing that as well with crafting, trying to finish off all the May projects, get started on the June ones, and keep moving forward. So let's jump right in. Today I am drinking the leftovers of a tea sample. It was just in a Ziploc bag, so you're not missing anything in that I didn't bring it to show you. It is called David's Earl Grey Cream. It's from David's Tea, and it is their Earl Grey with a bit of a cream flavor to it. A while back I did a review on the blog. This was back when I was still reviewing lots of tea. I've sort of let that fall by the wayside because I have more tea than I could ever drink. But this was, I did kind of what I called the Earl Grey Wars, and I got Earl Grey and Earl Grey Cream from a variety of sources and kind of tasted them against each other and then ranked them in order. So David's was among the top, I believe, and I had a little bit of a sample left, and so I finished that off, and today I am drinking that in my Hoops and Yo-Yo mug, which is kind of fun. It says "Caffeinate me" and "Hey cutie, could I get a refill?" Mostly I'm just looking forward to a warm drink. So that is delicious. I take it without milk, but I'm sure it would be lovely with milk. It already has kind of a creamy taste. I don't know if it has any milk in it. You can check the review on my website if you're interested. So that was David's Tea Earl Grey Cream. So let's talk about the knits. I have one very, very small finish for this week. I am still working on knitting blanket squares for Warm Up America. It is a Warm Up America is a place that donates blankets to those in need, anywhere from Red Cross or disaster shelters to the homeless, battered women's shelters, just anyone who is in need. And they accept squares that are 7 by 9 inches. And for the month of May, Knitters Pride is doing sort of a charity contest to see who can knit up the most blanket squares. Hint, it's not me. But I have been knitting a few because I would like to send a package at the end of May. And I had a couple skeins of Kramer Perfection worsted in the stash, and I thought they would make great blanket squares. I've showed you a couple of them. This is one that I just finished this week. I just made this one up. It is a simple cable on the edges with stockinette. So, and I need to block the top edge because it's rolling a little bit. But that is one. And then I am working on another one. This is just a pretty simple broken rib bib square. I'm casting it on in general between about 37 and 40 stitches, kind of just depends. And I have a cardboard square cut out, which was a great recommendation by Warm Up America and would be great for any kind of blanket project that you were doing. I cut out a cardboard square that is 7 by 9 inches, and then I just hold my square up to it, so I don't have to keep measuring. I just hold it up to the cardboard square, and when it is when the square that I'm knitting is the size of the cardboard square, I can stop. So I don't know if I'll get one more after this out of this. Technically, they've been between 24 and 26 grams, so I might. But my plan was just to try and use up some stash and make some squares for a good cause. Warm Up America prefers that they be wool and acrylic or superwash for easy care. So again, I'm using Creme of Perfection worsted, and this is called a broken rib square. I believe it was a dishcloth pattern, and there will be notes on my project page, and I will link to it in the show notes. So I'm working on those. That one square is the only finished object for this week, but I have plenty of other things to talk about. So next up on my crafting for this week, and I made amazing progress on this week, is my review knit for A Good Yarn Sarasota in Florida. They are developing a new in-house yarn line called Boca Chica, and it is 100% superwash merino, and it is a fingering weight on the light side of fingering because it is about 480 yards per 4 ounces. So that is definitely a lighter weight. And my colorways are Duval Street and Rainbow Reef, and they are bright. And I decided that I wanted to do a summer top. And so what I decided I wanted to do was Elfie, which is a pattern by Astrid Schramm, or at least I'm pronouncing it Elfie. It's E-L-F-E, so it's probably Elfa, but I do not even begin to pronounce German correctly. So it is by Astrid Schramm, and it is a top-down contiguous sleeve, kind of just little top for the summer. You knit the contiguous sleeves down to where you pull off for the body stitches, and you just bind off there, and that is it. So it's just like a very capped sleeve, just slightly covering your shoulders knit. Elfa is intended to be knit in a striping pattern where you have heavier, larger stripes of the dark color at the top and lighter stripes of thinner stripes of the light, and then you move down, kind of reversing your order. So the pattern is supposed to be dark at the top and light at the bottom. What I decided to do, because I did not like the way my stripes were coming out, is I decided to pursue or learn a new technique called helical knitting, which is not terribly different from regular knitting. It's just kind of a different visualization of how you're knitting your stitches, and it does a couple things. One is it sort of seats the colors on top of each other, and it moves the beginning of the round when you're working on it to different stitches around, so you don't get the very obvious jog between the colors. Anyway, so when I talked to you last week, or last Monday, I was slightly past the division of the sleeves. I think I had maybe an inch or two done, and I have most of the body complete now. So this is my Elfa, and yes, it is doing some crazy pooling. And you know what? I don't mind. This whole top is going to be kind of crazy, and I'm probably mostly going to wear it in my home office, so it's fine. It does kind of do the same thing all the way around, so it's got some visual interest. And Elfa is also, it has slight A-line shaping, so it does change the stitch count slightly, which is why things have been moving. Yes, it's kind of crazy, and I still kind of love it. Elfa is supposed to be knit kind of long. The schematic for my size shows a length of 16 inches. It is supposed to fall like kind of below your hip. And at last count, I was maybe 4 or 5 centimeters away. It is a European pattern, so I've been sort of measuring in centimeters because it doesn't matter. It's 40 centimeters or 16 inches basically. And last I checked, I had maybe 13 and a half, maybe close to 14. So I really only have a couple inches left. And then the bottom will just get a simple treatment like the rest of the edges of the sweater, and then I will be done. I would say I like knitting with the yarn. It is heavily plied. It looked originally like a chainette construction to me, but it is actually plied. And it's almost a little bit of a cottony feel to the plying. It is very soft. It is nice and squishy and feels like merino, but the plying is just really odd. It's they're quite thin plies, so I believe it might even be an 8-ply, but I'd have to double check. Anyway, I am enjoying this process. The colors are a little bright, and if had to do over, I might have selected slightly more muted colors, but I think I'm going to get a lot of wear out of this top because I think it's going to be nice to throw on around the house, and it'll just be kind of a nice summer top, and yeah. So I have a couple more inches. I hope to have this done and blocked and be ready to talk to you about it and give you a full review next week. But I would say it has stood up to ripping, and there has been some. It is ever so slightly splitty, but I am actually using my Knitter's Pride ginger needles. They are wood needles, and I believe I went down one size from the pattern. Yeah, I believe it called for a 5, and I went ahead and went on US 4s. But these are the Knitter's Pride ginger needles, and they do not have super sharp tips, so I am finding that I don't find it super splitty. I do know that one other person who worked with super sharp needles found it a little splitty. But I think it's just fun, and they are fun, vibrant colors. These would also make amazing socks. I just decided because I had 2 skeins and enough yardage to do a bigger project. So that is my Elfa. Gosh, I really didn't realize quite how much that had pooled until I laid it out in front of me. That's just wild, isn't it? Crazy zigzag pooling! Anyway, so this is Elfa, and again, the yarn is Boca Chica, and it is from A Good Yarn, Sarasota, Florida, and I will be finishing with that hopefully in the next day or two, and then block it, photograph it, and talk to you about it next week, and that will be the finish of that, which is nice because that was a May knit, so I'm making lots of good progress on that. The second thing I have on the needles, which you already knew about, is my Night Shift, which is a shawl by Andrea Mowry, who is Drea Renee Knits. And it is a shawl that makes use of slip stitch techniques to create a beautiful woolly shawl. The original pattern called for spin cycle yarns, which are sort of a cross between commercial and indie. I guess technically they're indie, and they are not hand spun, but they are made to look hand spun. But I decided for mine that I was going to use my hand spun, and so I have been creating. I think I spent most of my time on the Elfa this week, but I have gotten further. I am now in section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there are 10 sections. I'm not halfway done in the knitting because the shawl keeps growing. It is an asymmetrical triangle that starts at a point, and then you are mixing and matching your colors in different permutations and different patterns to create a really, really beautiful colored shawl. So I am really happy with my color selections thus far. I have used every color once, and I have just switched over from using one, the first section is knit using one color as a background color, and the second section is knit using a different color as the background color, and I have just switched over. So I'm really pleased with that. I did not get as much work in on it as I had hoped this week, but my plan is to finish up Elfa in the next day or two, and then work on this and hopefully finish this before I leave on my trip. I had sort of slated this as a May knit. It is not dependent on deadline because it is not for a review or any commitment that I've made. It's just something I would like to finish before I leave. And then I have to figure out what to do with my leftovers because each colorway only calls for about 150 yards. So the total yardage used is 900 yards, and most of the shawls that I have seen have blocked out quite large, so I'm not really sure that I want to expand on the shawl, but I will have quite a few half skeins of handspun left. So I haven't decided if I should just turn it into a second shawl, or if maybe I should take them and do a, I believe it's called Shifty, which is the cropped sweater top, which follows sort of the same stitch pattern. And I haven't decided if I should do that and then maybe spin up something kind of as a main color in the background and use all those colors then to make myself a matching sweater, or exactly what I want to do. But I am excited because I am using handspun that has been in the stash, and a couple of the skeins that I chose to use in this have been in the stash for quite a long time. One of them has probably, it was in my shop for a few years before I pulled it out, and then it's been sitting for another year or two after that. So it's probably at least 5 years old. And so it's kind of fun to get to use up some of my hand spun. And it is just bright and colorful, and I am loving it. So that is the second project on the needles. The third project on the needles is something that I told you I was going to start this week, and I did, but I did not get very far, and that is I wanted to join the Briggs & Little Spring Knit-Along Crochet Along. That is happening in the Briggs & Little Ravelry group. There are prizes, and it was the Knit-Along Craft-Along is to emphasize the lighter weights of yarn that Briggs & Little Wool sells. And I forgot to bring the label with me, which I meant to do, but they are emphasizing their sport weight yarns. And I have used their Durasport before, and Briggs & Little yarns are fairly rustic. They are really durable yarns meant for outerwear for the most part, and so they are not super soft. They will wear like iron, and they will make very, very warm knits, but they're not super soft. However, I decided to try one of their brands, which is called Light and Fancy Soft Spun. And I showed you this in the vacuum packaging last week, but here it is out of there. It is a sport weight single, and it is in the colorway Cranberry, and it is 100% wool. And this, surprisingly, is quite a bit softer. I mean, it is still a little bit rustic. It's not as soft as other singles that I might use. For instance, it is not anywhere near any of the Malabrigo softness, but it is actually quite soft, and I probably could wear it up against my neck. I decided to do a lovely spring cowl, and I cannot remember the name of it because I have not really started the patterning yet, but it is like a cowl with a bunch of leaves into it. And so far I have just cast on and done the border, which is a seed stitch border, and I think I still have a couple rows to go on this, so there's really not very much to see, but I hope by next week I will have finished this. It's just a quick cowl, about 200 yards, and the yarn is about 270 yards. I haven't decided if I'm just going to make the cowl a little bit longer. I did go up a needle size because I wanted to try and use up more of my yarn. So mine will be just a little bit looser, but that's okay because with the single it will trap air pockets, which will make it nice and warm. Or this can also be used as kind of a lightweight cowl as an accessory over the summer. I probably won't because it gets into the hundreds here, but there are places where it is cool enough to potentially wear a cowl during the summer. So that is going to be, like I said, my leaves cowl. I just need to get to the leaf lace part. So that is the third project on my needles, and that I hope to work through this week. So I hope to come to you with 2 finished objects next week. I have started debating my vacation knitting, so I will bring those next week. And that is it for knitting, although I'm going to backtrack just slightly ever so much. Are you knitting along with us for the Spring Knit-Along? That is a spring garment knit-along that I am hosting with the ladies over at the Northern Knits podcast. They are Jocelyn and Diana, and a lovely podcast out of Canada, and we have teamed up to do the Spring Garment Knit-Along, which started at the spring equinox and runs through the summer solstice, which is June 21st. And in order to enter, you just have to craft some kind of a spring garment. You can knit, weave, sew, spin, crochet, and it just has to be an adult garment, which can be anything from a sweater to a shawl to a dress, skirt, anything. And this would fit squarely in there because it is a summer top. So that is what I am sort of working on. Of course, I am not eligible for prizes. There will be prizes, and there has been some lovely chat in the chat thread in my group, as well as over in the Northern Knits podcast group. I need to go over there and pop some pictures in and chat a little bit more. But there will be prize draws in each group. And so that will be going until June 21st. There is still time to knit a shawl because you still have a month from today. So if you haven't considered participating, think about it. So that is the Spring Garment Make-Along joint between the Corner of Knit and Tea and the Northern Knits podcast. So that covers all the knitting. Let's talk spinning. I finally have a finished spin. This week I worked to get that beautiful red fiber off my wheel. That is some old fiber in my stash from the Sanguine Griffin. It was fiber to mock her super popular Bugga base, which was 70% merino, 20% cashmere, and 10% nylon. And the colorway had an Indian name, which I believe came out of one of the chakras. I renamed it because I didn't particularly want to use that name. I'm not sure that it would have necessarily been cultural appropriation, but given all the recent discussions, I just decided to steer clear of that, and I am calling this cherry wine, although somebody suggested it could also be chocolate-covered cherries. The fiber was dark red, and kind of a lighter red, a darker wine red, and then also some dark spots of blue, and so it is just a beautiful tonal yarn. It is super soft, really nice against my neck. It would make lovely socks, or it would also make an amazing shawl, and I got great yardage. It is 483 yards. I would say probably about a sport weight. It was 4.2 ounces, and it is up in the shop now. So this is unlike a lot of the things that I do, because it is very semi-solid, and I usually in spinning tends towards the variegated and kind of creating a maximum barber pole look with my spinning, but this one came out beautifully. It's really funny. My husband, for the most part, doesn't notice a lot of my crafting. Like, if I ask him, he'll give me an opinion, but for the most part, you know. And I usually wash my handspun in the guest bathroom sink and then hang it up to dry in the guest bathroom shower. And the other day he said, that yarn that you have in the shower, which was this one, that's really pretty. And I was like, oh, thanks. And he's like, I really like it. The color's amazing. And he doesn't normally comment on things. So he likes this one. So I suppose if you guys don't buy it, I'll have to make him something out of it. But it is now up in the shop, and I think it would make a beautiful accessory shawl, hat, and mitts. It would make lovely squishy socks to pamper your feet with, but it's so pretty. I just don't know if you'd want to do that with it. So that is cherry wine, Bugga fiber, merino cashmere nylon, and that is up in my shop right now. So lastly, I moved on to the next spin. I showed you this last week. This is a Fluttering of Ravens, which was a Hello Yarn Club. It is Charolais fiber, which is a little bit more rustic. I would say it's more crisp than rustic. It is not super scratchy, but it is definitely like a sturdier, and it's not that it's not soft. There is a good crimp to it, but I would just say it's a little bit crisper. And I think this would actually make great boot socks, and it is all these amazing shades of blue. And I am about 1.5 ounces into it. This is 2 ounces, and then I have another little bit out there that I haven't spun up yet. But my hope is to actually get this one done before I leave, and maybe even enough before I leave that I can put it up in the shop for a few days before I close the shop. Not permanently, just for my vacation, because I can't ship while I'm gone. But I am going to work on this one this week, and this coming weekend is Memorial Day weekend here in the United States, which is a 3-day weekend. Monday is a holiday off to honor our veterans, those who have served past and present, and those whose lives have been lost. So I will be off an extra day. I should be podcasting on Monday, but my plan is to spend time with my husband and craft and just enjoy the weekend. It is supposed to rain a whole bunch, so I suppose we'll be indoors quite a bit, but that is fine. We're just getting ready and packing and thinking about all of our adventures to come. So I will have one more episode with you before we go to Ireland. So I will see you next week. I will record on Monday, May 27th. And until then, I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.